Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lizel Ramos. I work for the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. I am the Chief of Rapid Response. In our bureau, we oversee everything from application intake, eligibility determinations, and everything from enrolling a person in our pre-enrollment, previously known as waiting list, to receiving the iBudget waiver services. That's all within our purview. And with me is Amanda Ingracia.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all here. Like Liesl said, my name is Amanda Ingracia, and I'm the program administrator. I oversee our application intake and eligibility determination process for services, and happy to be here today. And just some housekeeping, we have some wonderful folks out passing out our presentations. I'm sure there will be lots of information, maybe some new information, and so if you would like a copy of our slides, we can either send them to you later after the presentation, or we have paper copies available right now.
And if you haven't received one, if you want to raise your hand, we see our wonderful ladies over here, Rachel and Natasha. They're making sure everybody gets a copy.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Should I just tell our wonderful folks in the back, next slide, when we want to change the slide?
There you go.
No? I can do it?
Oh, where? Okay, we're ready for the next slide. There we go, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we are so happy to be here this afternoon, and we have a lot of information we're going to cover. This is a brief overview of our agenda. We're going to go over the application and eligibility determination process for services for all of the 7 disabilities that we serve. We're going to provide an overview of our pre-enrollment priority categories and a little bit more information about our iBudget Florida waiver enrollment and the different types of enrollment, as well as iBudget Florida waiver services that we do provide. Next slide. Are you coming to save the day?
No, I don't know.
No, he's coming up.
Oh. Okay, you can continue.
Okay, all right. So, awesome. So our agency's mission is that we support individuals with disabilities and their families in living, learning, and working within their communities by creating multiple pathways to possibilities. So this afternoon, we're going to go over some of those possibilities and how to enroll. Awesome. So who do we serve? So we serve over 60,000 individuals with developmental disabilities across the state of Florida. And of those, 35,000 are currently receiving iBudget Florida waiver services through our most traditional pathway, which is the iBudget Florida waiver. And it's our most recognized and traditional pathway. Oftentimes, if you hear that people are receiving APD services, it's most likely going to be through this particular waiver program. And it's a home and community-based waiver. It's a Medicaid waiver that allows individuals to remain in their communities by receiving services through the waiver. Awesome. So some of you may know, some of you may not know, but we recently launched an online application system for services in December of 2024. And so you can now apply for APD services through our online application system. We have our website here and in the packets. Paper applications are still also available in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole, and those can be submitted by fax, email, or online to your local regional office, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. So who's eligible for APD services? Our eligibility determination process, we have 3 main criteria that individuals need to meet when they're applying for services. They need to be 3 years of age or older. They must be domiciled in Florida, meaning their permanent residence is in Florida, and have a confirmed diagnosis of a developmental disability prior to the age of 18, and that's all defined in our rule and statute in particular. Awesome, so you're getting ready to apply for services. So what information is helpful when knowing what I need to do to apply? So we have our a new guide that we've created. It's on our website. It's called the APD Quick Guide Applying for Services, and it goes over the specific documentation that Liesel's going to talk about a little bit later, but it gives a really good overview of, I'm applying under this diagnosis, this is the documentation that APD is looking for, and this is what I need to provide when I submit my application. And it goes through that for each of the diagnoses, not just for one of them. And in that, it'll tell you the documentation of the diagnosis that we're looking for, again, for each of the specific disabilities. And we do need documentation of identity and Florida domicile, as well as the application must be complete and signed. We want all of the information that we're asking for. We shortened the application, so made it a little bit easier. And then again, it must be signed by either the applicant or the legal representative. Awesome. So we talked about this a little bit in the last slide. When we talk about verifying identity and domicile, there's specific documents that we're looking for, like a birth certificate, driver's license, or state-issued ID, a military dependent's ID card, or a social security card. Now, the agency has a variety of systems that we use to help quicken this process. Sometimes it can be hard to scan your driver's license and get it over to us, and we have different systems that we can use with other agencies to assist in verifying this information. And if we're unable to verify it through that process, we'll reach out to you in a letter and say, hey, can you please provide your driver's license so that we can make your application complete and keep moving it through our process.
And one thing I wanted to add too is that whenever an application is received, if we are unable to make an eligibility determination based on the information that has been submitted at the time of the application, we will issue what's called a request for additional information, and that document will detail everything that you need to submit in order for us to verify either identity or domicile or a diagnosis. So the agency will be in contact with you. And the other thing too, for anyone who applies via our online application system, there will be a status on that online application that you will be able to check on the status of your application. If it was received, just recently received, it'll say so. If it's under review, it'll say application under review. And if we needed additional information, it would say application pending. So there's a definition for each of those statuses on the main page of the online application system. As we launched the system, we also are in the process of enhancing it and adding new features to it. We have a couple new statuses that we're going to be adding. And another thing too is people can reapply via the online application system. If, for instance, they were determined ineligible in the past, they should be able to reapply and submit additional information. All of that is going to be available once we complete our enhancements sometime mid-July.
Thank you. Actually, this is your slide.
Okay. All right, so that was a good segue. I'm going to talk a little bit about what type of documents we need whenever we are reviewing for eligibility. So, you know, we provide services to individuals who have one of 7 developmental disabilities: autism or severe forms of autism, intellectual disability, Prader-Willi syndrome, and in fact, we're going to go over each of those 7 in just a minute. In order for us to be able to make a determination of eligibility, we need to have documentation that will substantiate the diagnosis. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is that we serve individuals with the most severe forms of the disabilities. And the reason is we serve individuals that without our APD waiver services would otherwise require services in an intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So there's criteria, there are guidelines that our reviewers follow to make sure that the person who's applying meets the criteria. And so we're going to be looking for example, if the person is applying under intellectual disability, We're going to be looking at tests, standardized IQ tests that show that the person has an IQ of 70 or below. We're also going to be looking at tests of adaptive functioning, diagnostic evaluations from licensed professionals for diagnosis such as spina bifida or cerebral palsy. All of those require specialized documents to verify that the person indeed meets the criteria for eligibility. Sometimes we'll be looking at documentation from a medical doctor, a healthcare provider. Sometimes we'll be looking for genetic testing in the event that some of the specific disabilities that we serve, one of the main ways that we can verify that the person does have that disability is through a genetic testing. We will also look at school records, as you know, if there are records available, such as IEPs or any type of summaries, or if they receive therapy, so therapy summaries or implementation plans or anything like that will also be good to submit that information. So at the time that you're applying for services, it's really important to prepare your documents before you submit the application and submit anything that you have that looks like this. So psychological evaluations will also be necessary, especially if we're reviewing for individuals who are applying under autism. Okay, so a little bit about the application process. Like we mentioned earlier, we do have the availability of submitting applications via the online application system. This is a secure system where you can submit your information, where you can upload different types of documents, and we can receive it that way. Or you can submit a paper application via mail or in person at one of our APD offices. To find the local office near you, you may visit our website at apdcares.org and go to the locations tab. You can click in the area that is closest to where you reside, and it will give you the information for that specific area. It will tell you who the regional operations manager is for that area. It will list other staff by topic, by the different types of things that they do. It will provide you with an address, and we have different field offices within each region. So it is possible that, for example, for the central region, that one has 3 field offices, one in the Orlando area, one in Lakeland, and one in Ocala. So it's good to go to our website and get the most pertinent information. All right, which slide is this? What number? So for application and eligibility determination process, first and foremost, you need to submit an application. With that application, you need to sign it. It's important that applications for individuals who are 18 years of age or older, the applicant, him or herself, needs to sign the application unless they have a legal representative that has been appointed to the client by the court of law. And if that's the case, then the legal representative can sign for the individual. Occasionally, some of the adults who apply for services don't have a legal representative, but may not be able to actually sign the application. They can mark the application, and someone else can witness that mark as being that of the individual, and that's perfectly fine. So once the application, once it's considered to be complete, because that's the other thing, if the application is incomplete, we're not able to complete an eligibility determination. So once it is complete, meaning that it's been submitted, it's signed, it contains all the information necessary to verify identity, verify domicile, verify age, and verify disability, then we can go ahead and proceed with making an eligibility determination. We need to review all the documentation. So APD will review and will notify the applicant if additional information is needed, and that's, remember, the form that I mentioned earlier called the request for additional information. In that request for additional information, we will give the applicant specific information about what's needed and a deadline by which to submit that information. If the applicant is unable to submit that information by that deadline, that's fine. We will call the applicant and we'll ask, if we need to extend that deadline, and that will be fine. Sometimes we need to complete additional comprehensive evaluations, and those can take time. Sometimes it can take a month or two to even schedule a comprehensive evaluation. So once you schedule it, have the information, submit it, then we can complete an eligibility review. And then after we review, the APD will issue a notice in writing notifying the applicant of the eligibility determination. So applicants who are determined to be eligible then will receive a notice of eligibility for APD services, and that one will, of course, provide information to the applicant about where, what are the next steps, what's going to happen next. Individuals who are not found to be eligible will have due process rights. They can challenge the determination, submit new documentation, or even reapply if necessary. All right, so remember a little while ago I mentioned that we serve 7 developmental disabilities, and these are the 7. So individuals with intellectual disability with an IQ of 70 and deficits in adaptive functioning, also individuals with cerebral palsy, individuals with severe forms of autism, and we have a promulgated rule that specifies specifically what it is that what type of documentation we need and what type of information we need to review in order for the person to meet the rule criteria for eligibility under autism. Spina bifida cystica and myelomeningocele, and individuals with Down syndrome. We also serve individuals who have Phelan-McDermid syndrome, Prader-Willi syndrome, and those are the 7, and all of these must manifest prior to the age of 18. So meaning that the person was born with a disability and it's going to be expected to last indefinitely. Okay, next. Huh? Do we go over high risk? I don't know.
Is that age limit going to be extended?
So, you mean that the disability has to be manifested prior to the age of 18? No, because for developmental disabilities, it's disabilities that are neurologically, that have been, that the person was born with and that are manifested in the early years. And so, that's a good question that you're asking, and even though our agency, and thank you, even though the agency is called the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, the legislature has specified the 7 disabilities that we do serve. But in a minute, we're going to talk about a program that we do have that assists persons with all disabilities, and we'll talk about that in just a minute.
We also want to mention that if a person may have a TBI prior to the age of 18 and would be eligible, perhaps under an intellectual disability.
That's a good point, and that is right. If the person has a traumatic brain injury prior to the age of 18, which causes deficits in cognitive deficits, and the person ends up with an IQ of 70 or below, then they would be eligible for services from APD. Yes. This is what, 13. Okay, the autism. Let me go there. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the first disability that we're going to talk about, establishing eligibility for individuals with severe forms of autism. What we're going to be looking at is a documentation that will show that the person has a pervasive neurologically based developmental disability of extended duration that causes severe learning, communication, and behavior disorders. A lot of times we get questions about, well, how come if my son or daughter has a diagnosis of autism, they haven't been able to be determined eligible for APD services? And what happens is APD serves individuals with the most severe forms of autism, meaning that they have severe forms of learning disabilities, communication disorders, or behavior disorders that affect them going forward. And also the age of onset needs to be during infancy or childhood. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Does it have an age limitation?
As long as it is, the onsite is during childhood or so prior to the age of 18. So as long as there is documentation that the onsite of the disability occurred prior to the age of 18, and that's going to be true for all of the developmental disabilities that we serve. It's prior to the age of 18. Good questions, thank you. So can we hold off on individual questions? If you have a specific individual question, we're going to stay around for, however long we need to after the session, and we will more than happy to address any specific questions you may have. Okay? Thank you. Okay, so next, individuals with cerebral palsy. So these are going to be individuals who, when the documentation that we review is going to show that they have a group of disabling symptoms of extending duration that are the result of damage to the developing brain. This does not include symptoms or impairments resulting solely from a stroke. And the diagnosis of it needs to be confirmed by medical records, and again, with an onset prior to the age of 18. You'll notice that that's a consistent trend among all the different disabilities. For Down syndrome, so anybody with a confirmed diagnosis of Down syndrome, and they provide the documentation that shows the diagnosis, they would be eligible for Down syndrome. It requires medical records certifying the physical signs and symptoms of the syndrome. Individuals with intellectual disability. So again, remember earlier I mentioned that this would be individuals with an IQ of 70 or below, or 2 standard deviations below the mean, that have a significant sub-average general intellectual functioning, significant deficits in adaptive functioning, also manifests prior to the age of 18, can be reasonably expected to continue indefinitely. So these developmental disabilities are conditions that are going to last the entire lifespan of the person. With therapy, they're going to, they could get better, but they're going to last for their entire life. Again, the IQ test, we should receive some type of IQ test that shows that they have an IQ of 70 or below. And we will also need to request adaptive tests from a licensed psychologist. Okay, so again, for intellectual disability, we're going to be looking at significantly sub-average general intellectual functioning. That's evidenced by an IQ of 2 standard deviations below the mean. So that would be 70, an IQ of 70 or below, where there will be significant deficits in adaptive functioning, and that their condition is reasonably expected to continue indefinitely through their entire life. Phelan-McDermid syndrome, I don't think we have very many individuals with Phelan-McDermid syndrome, but those who do, if you have a confirmed diagnosis of Phelan-McDermid syndrome, you're eligible to receive APD services. And individuals with Phelan-McDermid syndrome can go straight to the iBudget waiver. They do not require to wait in the pre-enrollment period. And this condition is generally characterized by low muscle tone, absent to severely delayed speech, moderate to profound intellectual disability. And it requires documentation from a physician documenting the diagnosis of Phelan-McDermott. Individuals with Prader-Willi syndrome are also eligible to receive services from the agency, and these are individuals with a condition that is typified by neonatal hypotonia with failure to thrive or hyperphagia, and they have an excessive drive to eat, which leads to obesity. Diagnosis is confirmed again by written documentation from a medical professional. Spina bifida, individuals with spina bifida are also eligible to receive services from the agency. Again, we would need a medical diagnosis of spina bifida cystica or myelomeningocele. Individuals with spina bifida occulta are not eligible to receive services from the agency. And this diagnosis is made by a medical doctor, doctor of osteopathy, or any type of medical records that the diagnosis occurred prior to the age of 18. Okay, so there is a group of individuals, ages 3 to 5, who perhaps don't have a confirmed diagnosis of a developmental disability, but they show some signs of perhaps they're at high risk of developing a developmental disability. We serve children between the ages of 3 and 5 through a specific funding source. They don't go into the iBudget waiver, but we do have some resources to be able to provide some therapies or to be able to provide some comprehensive evaluations if needed. So these would be children who may have a delay in cognition, language, or physical development, children who have survived a catastrophic infectious or traumatic illness, a child with a parent or guardian with a developmental disability, or a child who has a physical or genetic anomaly associated with a developmental disability, but just haven't quite have a confirmed diagnosis of a developmental disability. By the age of 5, if we receive the confirmed diagnosis of a developmental disability, then they can go in pre-enrollment and they can continue being an active client of the agency. If we don't have a confirmed diagnosis by the age of 5, we can help obtain a confirmed diagnosis. We can schedule a assessment, but we do need that confirmed diagnosis in order for the child to continue to receive services from the agency. Is this one still mine? So once a person is determined eligible for APD services, some of you may have heard of a term called a waiting list. We now refer to the waiting list as pre-enrollment. Individuals who are determined eligible for APD, they have a level of care that meets the criteria for services in an intermediate care facility for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Once they meet that criteria, they're placed in a pre-enrollment priority category, and this is by priority by need. Priority 1 is crisis situations. These are individuals who are homeless, individuals whose caregivers are unable to provide care to them due to health issues or extenuating circumstances, and individuals for whom a caregiver is needed, or individuals whose behaviors pose a threat to themselves or others and they need medical attention, or they have had involvement with law enforcement. So if they meet those 3 criteria, one of those or more of those 3 criteria, they're determined to be in crisis. Once an individual is determined to be in crisis, then they can enroll in the iBudget waiver. Category 2 are those children in foster care. So children in foster care who at the time of permanency, meaning that they've been adopted, reunified with their parents, or placed in a permanent placement with someone, and they have reached that permanency, that status of permanency, they go from foster care and they are eligible to enroll in the iBudget waiver as long as they have a developmental disability. Those who are in category 3 are individuals who have intensive needs, Category 4 are those for individuals whose caregivers are aging or are 60 years of age or older. It used to be 70 years of age or older, but last year the legislature lowered that to 60. Also, category 5 is those individuals who are transitioning out of school into the community. So those who need assistance with perhaps receiving supports to get a job or supports to go into an adult day training or pre-vocational type services or voc rehab, those would be in category 5. Category 6 is everybody age 21 or over who do not meet the criteria for 1 through 5. And category 7 is everybody under the age of 21 who do not meet the criteria from 1 to 5. So applicants, again, I think that I went too fast and I already explained some of this, but this goes into some detail. Applicants are determined to be eligible for APD services and they're waiting to receive services from the iBudget, which is the most typical path for obtaining services. They go into the priority categories, and I mentioned earlier, category 1 is those who are homeless, danger to self or others, or whose caregivers are unable to continue providing care for them. Once they meet that criteria, then they go on to the waiver. And like I mentioned earlier, category 2, yeah, you can go to the next. Category 2 are going to be, again, the foster care children who reach permanency. So not only if they reach permanency, but also if they are between the ages of 18 and 22 and need services from the agency, they can also receive home and community-based services waiver. And then category 3 are those who are in, who have significant needs. Their caregiver has a documented condition that perhaps they're not going to be able to provide care for their loved one within the next year or so. They are at substantial risk of incarceration. Their behaviors or physical needs place them or their caregiver at risk of serious harm, or they're identified as ready for discharge from a facility within the next year. Category 4, like I mentioned earlier, is those whose caregivers are 60 years of age or older, and category 5, those who are transitioning within the next 12 months into out of the school system. 6, everybody who's 21 years of age or older, and 7, everybody who's under the age of 21. And we do go through a category cleanup every so often so that individuals who turn 21, we change their category from 7 to 6. Mm-hmm.
You're good. Oh, you're good. We switch.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So Lisa went over our pre-enrollment priority categories and how those end up leading into enrollment. And so how do people enroll? Well, there's a few different types of ways. Lisa touched on our crisis waiver enrollment. So if individuals are determined to meet our category 1 criteria for crisis, and once they do meet eligibility for APD and eligibility for crisis, then they're able to enroll what we call crisis waiver enrollment. Any of our community-based care kids are able to enroll through that category 2. Pre-enrollment to waiver offers, we call these pre-enrollment to waiver offers or interest letters, and when the agency is allocated funds from the legislature, we're able to send out letters to enroll individuals onto the iBudget waiver. Dependents of our active duty military service members, we work very closely with our military family needs network to stay identified of who these individuals are, so that as the families are moving from state to state, that they're still able to receive services for their children. Any individuals who are in an ICF, an intermediate care facility, and are wanting to transition back into the community, they have a choice to go back and forth between either the facility or the community, and so that allows them to enroll through iBudget. Same thing for our nursing home transitions. And then as Liesl said before, Phil and McDermott is the one diagnosis that's an automatic to the waiver once we've made you eligible for APD. And so what type of services does APD provide, or the iBudget waiver rather? We have a lot more information on our website, and I think on the next slide we're gonna go through a little bit more of the waiver. So we want individuals to receive iBudget waiver services. So that individuals with developmental disabilities have a safe place to live, have meaningful day activity, receive any medically necessary equipment and supplies, and to receive transportation to access those services that they need. We have a certain type of funding. It's called individual and family supports. We often refer to it as IFS funding. And it's similar to the iBudget waiver, but we use it for a specific group of people, usually for pre-enrollment clients, but it kind of depends on the situation. And the IFS funds allows us to provide assistance for these criteria there for short-term temporary services, so adult day training, companion services, employment and pre-vocational services. We won't duplicate what Voc Rehab does, but we do partner with them. Personal supports, residential habilitation services, specialized therapies, supported living services, and transportation, again, kind of to and from waiver services or from services that individuals need. Okay, so some of you may be familiar. We partnered with the Agency for Healthcare Administration, ACO, during the 2023 and 2024 legislative sessions, and were directed to implement a managed care pilot project. And this pilot project has currently been in effect since October 2024. That's when we had our first enrollee. And the managed care pilot combines the long-term care waiver services as well as the traditional services through the iBudget Florida waiver through that managed care model. And the intent is to provide that comprehensive service coverage for individuals with disabilities. Participation is completely voluntary, and there are currently 6 pilot counties that the managed care pilot is being offered to right now.
And there's a total of 600 individuals who can participate as it is right now.
The best source would be through the Agency for Healthcare Administration's website. They have the frequently asked questions page.
We'll get it for you.
Let's talk afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. Did I go too fast?
Nope. Oh, okay. I don't think so. All right, so next we'll talk a little bit about Hope Florida. Hope Florida is a program that's offered at multiple state agencies, most of the social service agencies like Department of Juvenile Justice, Elder Affairs, Veterans Affairs, Department of Children and Families, and the Hope Florida program was spearheaded by First Lady Casey DeSantis to help guide Floridians through any type of need that they have. And so this is the program we were talking about earlier that if an individual or family calls the Hope line, the 833 phone number, and say, hey, I have someone who has a disability, we will help individuals with any disability, not just the 7 that are covered through APD. It's any disability. We'll direct you to a Hope Navigator and help to connect the nonprofit resources, the government assistance, and the faith-based resources, because throughout the state there's a whole lot of resources that some people just have no idea how to get access to, and so the navigators help to bridge that gap. And if you have more information about Hope Florida, we have our lovely Hope Florida APD representatives who are presenting tomorrow who will give a great presentation.
Yeah, the presentation is tomorrow at 11. Where's the presentation? It's in Bay Hill. So if you want more information about Hope Florida and our Hope Navigation program, please make sure that you go to our Hope presentation tomorrow at 11.
All right, I'm sure there's lots of questions. I saw your hand first.
I've got a letter, I just got it, it just got approved, but my letter says we got approved at level 6 because I'm only 60, and the letter says I have to be 70. How do I get that fixed?
Come talk to me.
Yeah.
I want to see the letter, and I'll work with you.
Yeah. Yes.
We are on iWaiver CDC Plus,
Yeah.
and the companion is trying to purchase a home, and the mortgage or the finance people want a proof of employment. And I know previously they said they won't, they're asking for somebody official to fill out a form for proof of employment, and maybe the daughter looks fishy. So is that something we could send to APD?
So we have our CDC Plus representatives here. They're going to be presenting tomorrow, but if you give us your information in your card, we'll make sure to hand it to them, and they can help you with that.
And I have a comment card up here, so I'll have you fill it out and we'll give it to them.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you do have some cards on your chairs. If you have any specific questions about your loved one or anything that's personal, please make sure you put it on that card. Come to us, and we'll be happy to help you at the end of the presentation. Yes. I can't hear you. How long is the wait list? And that is a very good question. So there is no way to predict how long it's going to take a person from the time they go on pre-enrollment to the time they begin receiving services. Again, it's based, again, ma'am, it depends on the person's needs, and it depends on whether or not there are funds available to provide services to each individual. Last year, we issued over several thousand interest letters offering iBudget waiver enrollment. The legislature gave us additional funds for those individuals who are in categories 3, 4, and 5. So we did offer iBudget waiver to those individuals. We also offered the Developmental Disabilities Managed Care Pilot Program, which Amanda talked about just a moment ago. So there are different services and different ways to obtain and receive services through the waiver. There is not a specific time frame for the moment a person goes in pre-enrollment to the moment that they begin receiving services. But if anybody has any question about where they are in pre-enrollment at the time, right now, we'll be happy to take the information back with us, and we will be happy to talk to you and figure out if there's any way or any mechanism for providing additional services. We issued pre-enrollment interest letters to everybody in categories 3, 4, and 5. If your loved one is in category 4 and you did not receive a letter, you need to make sure that your information is correct in our system so that we can make sure. Pardon me? They need to reach out to their regional office so that they can make sure that the regional office has their correct information so that they can receive the interest letter. We'll be happy to talk to you at the end of the presentation, so if you can come over. We'll be happy to gather the information. Yes, ma'am. Interest letters were issued last year as a result of additional funding that the agency received from the legislature, where we provided these letters. They're another way of offer letters. They were offer letters that were issued to individuals who met the criteria for enrollment in the iBudget waiver. So like I mentioned earlier, we have individuals in pre-enrollment. People who are in categories 1 and 2 are automatically enrolled in the iBudget waiver. Anybody in categories 3, 4, and 5 received letters offering enrollment in the iBudget waiver as long as they met all the criteria necessary. For 6 and 7 is an age, but it's really important, though, that if there are any changing circumstances, that you let the region know. We did offer letters to additional people in category 6 who had been in pre-enrollment the longest. So there have been different types of efforts to offer enrollment to as many people as possible within the established funds that we received this fiscal year by the legislature. You're welcome. Yes, sir. Thank you. That's a very good question. And we are in the process of doing an overhaul of our website. And that will include more information about services that are available. If your child is receiving services from the waiver, is that your child is receiving services from the waiver, your waiver support coordinator should be able to assist you with obtaining whatever information you need. All the how do you call that? The HCBS handbook has a definition for all the services that are available through the iBudget waiver, and we also have ACA publishes a document that is specific to each service and what's the cost for each service. If that's something that you're talking about the data, making sure that there's data about services that have been provided, rendered, cost, and all of that. Absolutely, absolutely, and that is part of what is being considered to put in the overhaul in our website. I don't have that information, but if you give me your name, I will make sure that I get that information to you. You're welcome. Yes, ma'am. So the Developmental Disabilities Managed Care Pilot, is that what you're referring to? Okay.
She's on APD, and so we were directed to kind of go over there to maybe they could help. And then it kind of said, well, they're not open until like October 26th to be able to take her. But
I'm not sure. I honestly.
then they were saying that you can use both services. So I'm asking if that pilot helps support the APD and vice versa, so that you can actually attain what you're trying to get.
So the developmental disability. Do you want to answer? No.
Yeah, I was just going to say. No. No, I think I understand. So the Developmental Disabilities Managed Care Pilot is through, I think you have the Florida Community Care Packet is what that looks like. And they're the ones who are basically the insurance plan that has the services that are providers through them. And so when we're sending interest letters for folks who are enrolling in the managed care pilot, it's APD clients, but they're being served through Florida Community Care, which is a contractor of a different state agency.
They're a managed care entity, and they're the ones providing the services. So they are providing all
To APD clients.
to APD clients, right? Yeah. But if you have any specific questions, specifically, yeah, we'll be here. Okay. Yes, ma'am. So anybody whose circumstances have changed and they're either homeless, caregiver unable, or their behavior poses a threat to themselves or others, you call the regional office and you say, I'm in crisis and I need to request a crisis waiver enrollment. And what that means is that you produce information necessary to support what's going on, and they review the information, and within 45 to 60 days, they go ahead and complete the review. Once a person is approved for waiver enrollment through crisis, they go on the iBudget waiver. Anytime a person is authorized for enrollment in the iBudget waiver, they also must be Medicaid recipients. So that's part of the process. If they don't already have Medicaid, they have to apply for Medicaid. So I'll be happy to talk to you and let you know who, depending on what region you're in, you can talk to. Yes, sir. Individuals who are eligible for ICF, yeah, so I'm trying to understand your question, really. So the question is, if they're eligible for APD and they're eligible for ICF, what's the process of enrolling in an ICF? They can. It's a choice. If the person wants to remain in pre-enrollment, they can. So, however, anybody who goes into an intermediate care facility for persons with intellectual developmental disabilities, they can be at an ICF, and through the choice counseling program, they can choose to go into the community, at which point they automatically get enrolled in the iBudget waiver. I'm not familiar with the process for enrolling somebody in an ICF, but I can find out. I'm not, but that doesn't mean that there isn't. Like I mentioned earlier, I work in the application eligibility determination process for, for the agency. We do have staff that are specifically tasked with working with ICF placement. Now, I do know, though, that if a person who is in an ICF, through the choice counseling process, request to leave the ICF and go into iBudget, we do have 90 days from the time they select a waiver support coordinator to enroll them on the iBudget waiver. So I think your question was the other way around, going from pre-enrollment to the ICF. I'm not familiar with that process, but I can find out for you. Yes.
Me, APD has been really slacking, and it's unacceptable, okay? There is no reason why the wait list is so long for our individuals to be getting services that are really in crisis to getting these services from the beginning. Now, I know with the Medicaid managed care, or I know you guys are trying to do the pilot. I'm gonna use me for example. They kicked me off of the waiver because DCF failed to tell me that I was eligible for renewal and that I needed to renew. It took me almost a year to get my services back, to the point where like I had to march my butt up to the county office to demand for my services. One, for an individual to have to go through that and to fight for his services is unacceptable. So if APD is so dedicated to getting individual services for people with disabilities, what is the excuse of the wait list being so long? And what is taking so long to get these people off the wait list that really needs these services?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question.
I don't see APD making any effort whatsoever. The governor has been literally fighting to get these people off these wait lists. You guys are getting funding from the state to get services to
And I agree. I agree. We do. This year, like I mentioned earlier, the legislature did appropriate additional funding. And with the additional funding, they instructed APD to send out the interest letters that we have been referring to. Those interest letters went out to a lot of people, thousands of people. And from those letters that went out, we did enroll people in the iBudget waiver. We also offered the developmental disabilities managed care pilot. Individuals have been receiving those services. Unfortunately, not everybody responds to those letters. We have also gone through a campaign of resending other letters. We have sent out texts, we have sent out emails indicating to some of the individuals whose letters went out to that have not responded, just to remind them, you know, we have been offering these letters. So if you know of anybody who is in priority category 3, 4, or 5,
It's not knowing anybody. It's taking accountability to get these individuals off the wait list. Now, this past session, I believe it was House Bill 1105. It was a bill made for people for APD because now Family Care Council, you guys, I don't know if it's Family Care Council or you guys have to provide a report by December 10th to Family Care Council and work really closely with them because we have been fighting for these individuals to get off the wait list, okay? You guys received funding probably from this upcoming budget, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but you guys are getting funding from this upcoming budget to take people off the wait list. If you guys are not taking these people off the wait list, where is the funding going? Is what I would like to know.
thank you, thank you. Thank you very much for your question. But again, we have been sending out the letters, and we have been notifying those who are identified as part of the individuals that met the criteria for enrolling on the iBudget waiver. And like I mentioned before, not everybody responds. So we are in a campaign of trying to make sure that everybody who was on that list, who did not respond to those letters, to give them a heads up, hey, you know, the fiscal year is coming to an end, and we did send out these letters. So anyway, if you are aware of anybody who's in priority categories 3, 4, and 5 who have not enrolled in the iBudget waiver, please remind them that they need to contact their local office because there are spots for them to enroll on the iBudget waiver. Everybody who's on our database in those categories, we sent letters to everyone in there.
And we are right at time, and I know that there's still a lot of questions. Lisa and I are going to be here, so please come up and ask us questions.
We're going to stand in the back of the room because I know that they have to prepare this for the next session. So thank you so much. We have business cards with us. We'll be happy to hand you a business card if your question didn't get answered, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.